When you look at pulling the different departments together and communicating with all the different stakeholders, one would say that that's a journey of itself. But what are some of the kind of objectives and processes that you've used in order to reach out to these different departments so that way you can communicate what you're doing within your role and expressing that to the business and stakeholders?
Another great question, Robert. I would say that communication has been perhaps my single most challenging endeavor through this program because speaking from Symcor's perspective, we are a processor. We provide services to many clients in Canada, but in particular within the banking industry. So a lot of our services have traditionally been very analog, things such as payments processing, statement production, cash management, courier management. So all these things that have a very physical element. And when you're talking about data, data is this thing, like people have a hard time getting their heads wrapped around something they can't actually see. And even if you do see data on a spreadsheet, for example, translating that kind of, black and white view into what it can be used for and how you can transform it is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get their heads wrapped around. So data literacy is a major objective, and it certainly has its challenges. Data literacy is not about training. Data literacy is being able to translate the things that each area of the organization, each stakeholder, translating the objectives of what their role means to that big picture vision and being able to communicate in that language. So the way that I talk to, or my team talks to folks within product management, is very different than how we communicate to individuals within operations. So it's being able to translate what those individuals need to understand so that they can start to shift their mindsets to find their place in that broader kind of data digital ecosystem.
So it's great to hear how you and your team communicate differently with the different groups. Speaking of data literacy and data literacy and data analytics, when you think about it, how do you see data and data analytics evolving at Symcor, where it is today and where it may be going in the future?
Well, I think data and data analytics, that is just really the foundation of this new data economy. Often our CEO talks about the fact that we are in a data economy. So this is where we're at. And I would say that we are still at the early stages of formulating what this new economy is going to look like. So in terms of data and analytics, having that capability. So if you think about, again, the data factory analogy and having that full scale capability to take a raw asset and transform it into something of value. So oftentimes we use the analogy of a tree pulp and paper analogy, where we are taking lumber and we are trees actually, and then turning that into pulp and paper. So there is this whole process. So for analytics and data, I do believe that is the future. So whether we're using data to create something new or to drive insights or to drive decision making, this is really like the core. So
Yeah, no, it certainly provides some feedback. When you look a few years from now, what would you think is the biggest challenges or biggest changes that you see in regards to data management in organizations in general?
So kind of going back to my history and working in data for 20 years, I'm starting to see the attention, like serious attention to the processing of data, the same way that I saw attention happen with the e-commerce era. So I kid you not, Robert, how I ended up in this space, I was actually working on a school project at a university, and it was to create a bookstore. And I didn't know what tax rate to put on the e-commerce application, because at that time, it was a little bit like the Wild Wild West. The rules around, how do you use the internet had not been defined. So kind of fast forward 20 years from now, we are in this place now. So you're starting to see a lot of new regulations. Certainly in Europe, you have the GDPR, and in California, you have the CCPA, and in Canada, we have a lot of activity happening around amendments to our privacy legislation. So I think it's about that shift is we're moving from this wild, wild west kind of opportunistic era to having much more structure, having a convergence of how various disciplines come together. And this is, again, kind of the theme of the program that I'm currently running is how do we bring it all together? Because this is really the future. It's about having sound and accountable data processing capabilities. It's not just about, like, that quick win, but how do you have that staying power? And I kind of fast forward to the future. I think we'll have a lot more clarity around the guardrails and guidelines that will be need to be put in place in order to do data processing. So we're starting to see a lot of convergence even in legal and regulatory disciplines such as consumer protection, privacy laws, and those sorts of things.
No, I totally agree. The convergence of all these disciplines coming together under one, which is definitely much needed.